but this alone, it's basically about 7 of them right here. Six true creepy horror stories.
Warehouse worker for
six true creepy horror stories. Six true creepy horror stories. Six true creepy horror. Six true creepy horror. Six true creepy horror stories animated
for a small business in my city.
Animations.
I'd been in and out of jobs for a while, so this wasn't really a career or anything.
All right.
I just did what I had to do every night, and that was it. Specifically, I had to unload pallets of shipments that came in and put everything in their designated places in the warehouse. Super simple job, and most of the time I just put in earbuds and listened to music while I did it. With the warehouse not being too big, very rarely would there be another person working overnight with me.
So you
that
were
would
there
only
by
be
yourself?
on the holidays.
What kind of job
this
is
night
that?
was just a regular night. I came in, counted the stock, then put my headphones in and started unloading the boxes from the shipments. I started at 10, and it was probably somewhere between 12 and 1 a.m. when a knock echoed through the building. I took my headphones out and listened, but didn't hear it anymore. The building was old and would creak and groan throughout the nights, especially when it was windy outside. But what I thought I heard was clearly someone knocking. I walked down to the back of the building and looked around, then went to the front. I didn't see anything inside, so I opened the front door and looked outside. The parking lot was empty, and the night was still and quiet. I shut and locked the door, then went back to work, thinking I must have just misheard it. Being more cautious though, I left my headphones out for a bit. 20-ish minutes went by before I heard something again. This wasn't a knock though, it was more of a single thump coming from the front. I hurried down the hallway and up to the front portion of the warehouse. Nothing was there. No signs of anything wrong or anyone at the door. I knew what I heard this time though, which is why I got kind of nervous. I stood in the middle of the room for a moment and just looked around silently, listening and looking for something, anything, to be the cause of these noises. Standing there, I got a bad gut feeling, just that something wasn't good about this. I walked up to the front door and leaned on it to look out at the parking lot again, but as I put my weight on the door, it swung open with ease. I stumbled forward, not expecting it. It was almost as if the door wasn't locked or even latched at all. Yet I had checked and locked it not even a half hour ago. I looked at the door, then saw the latch lying broken on the ground in front of me. My stomach tightened, and I felt my adrenaline suddenly spike. Not even a second later, I heard the faint sound of footsteps echoing from the dim hallway behind me.
Get your weapon. Get your weapon.
I quickly went out the door and into the parking lot,
Good shit.
still in a dazed and unsure state.
Good shit.
Once I was a good distance from the door, I turned around. Barely visible through the glass door, the shape of a figure walked up to the other side. They moved around for a moment, definitely looking at me. Then they walked away. I called the cops as soon as I could and waited in the parking lot, but never saw any more movement in the building.
I'm out for the night.
When they arrived, they found that he'd left through the back door, and it seems like they couldn't figure out anything else to help solve the case. A few things showed up missing, but nothing substantial. And honestly, I think it was probably just from a wrong stock count, Regardless of if anything was stolen, to break the latch, he must have had some kind of tool or weapon, which only makes the whole thing more scary. They also moved the door back to look like it was closed, knowing it would keep me from figuring out what was going on. Maybe if I hadn't noticed the door was broken, I would have come face to face with whoever that man was, and I have no way of knowing how that would have turned out. Although unlikely, I couldn't shake the feeling that he was coming after me for some reason, so I've since left that job and moved on, hoping I don't run into him again.
That's a smart man right there. He just like me, boy.
I'm a receptionist at a popular hotel chain in the US. For the better part of a year, I'd been working overnights. This night, I was doing my usual shift of 11 p.m. to 7 a.m. It was pouring outside, so I wasn't expecting any walk-ins, and on the schedule, it didn't show any bookings starting tonight. On nights like these, my job is to just stay awake and take phone calls, or help current customers with any room services or checkouts. We had a coffee machine in the hotel lobby, so I had a cup of coffee next to me as I tried to stay awake. Even having been on overnights for a while
iPhone
now,
4?
I still had trouble with getting tired on my shifts. The rain outside made me even more getting tired on my shifts.
That's an iPhone 6S Plus. Come on
The
now.
rain outside
Rose gold.
made
Come
me
on now.
even
How you
more
that at?
tired as well. But at 1 a.m., a phone call came in. I answered, and before I could even speak, a man quickly asked if we were still accepting walk-ins. Their voice was very muffled though, and there was a background sound that was really loud. "Yeah, we have rooms available for walk-ins tonight," I said. They responded, but I couldn't make out what they were saying. As I asked if they could repeat themselves, I looked up from the desk and saw a small light glowing outside.
Yo.
It was from a phone, as someone was holding it up to their ear, standing almost right up against the front window in the pouring rain. Knowing it had to be the man I was talking to, I was about to wave to them, but something about this made me feel uneasy,
Right.
so I decided to pretend like I didn't see him. A moment later, though, he ended the phone call. I saw the lights turn off outside, and the outline of the man moving toward the entrance. The doors opened, and the man walked through the hotel lobby, dragging water across the floor. He came up to the counter and bluntly asked for a room. He was fully soaked and had water dripping from his hair, yet his face showed nothing but exhaustion. I don't know if I'd ever seen someone look so sleep-deprived. I said okay and found him a room, then asked how he'd like to pay for it. He slowly reached into his pocket and pulled out a debit card, then handed it to me. I swiped it, but it declined.
Uh-oh.
I looked up at him, only to see he was staring at me. It didn't go through. Do you have another card to try?
I love shopping the RealReal. It's Gucci,
Louis Vuitton,
Prada,
Hermes,
Dior,
Rolex,
Burberry,
Saint Laurent.
The man didn't respond, holding his stare and not moving aside from a few blinks. As the seconds kept on without any reaction, I grew more and more uneasy. I looked down and put the card on the desk, sliding it back to him, but he didn't even look at it. He turned and started walking away from the desk and toward the hallway with the rooms. By now, I knew something wasn't right, so I quickly pressed the button that calls for police, then went out to the hallway the man was in, finding him standing at the door to one of the rooms. He started pounding on it, yelling in a harsh voice for them to open the door. I tried telling him to stop, but I didn't want to get too close, not knowing if he was in some kind of dangerous state. But then he pulled a small knife from his pocket and started trying to pry the door open. I yelled at him to stop and that the police were on their way. The man stopped for a second and shot an awful glance at me, then faced me and screamed at me to open the door for him as he started walking down the hallway. I was terrified and just ran right out of the hotel and into the parking lot.
Get it far from Ryan.
Through the window, I could see him go back to the same door and continue pounding on it.
They been watching through the window.
Police were quick to show up, making it inside before the man could get into the room. Somehow they got him to drop the knife and locked him up in their car. The person that was in the room came out. It was a kind young lady, visibly shaking and horrified. Turned out, the man was an ex of hers that she hadn't seen or talked to in over 10 years.
Damn!
How he got the information on where she was staying and even what room she was in, nobody seems to know. They aren't even sure how long he'd been stalking her for, which is really disturbing. But what he would have done had he gotten in is likely even more
That nigga
disturbing.
got the Itachi ponytail. You know he was up to no good.
My parents own a small shop
this the
in
new
our
one.
town. It's nothing special, just selling regular groceries and food from local businesses. They'd been running it for over 20 years, and my dad took it very seriously, keeping the store open until 12 every night, and sometimes even staying later. When I turned 16, I started helping out a few hours a week, and when I turned 8, working full-time while doing online college courses. This night was my dad's day off, and my mom was having some health issues at the time, so it was just me closing the store. It usually stays not so busy for the last few hours of the night, and there was never too much to
Why are
stock
so many of these
either.
stores people by themselves? That's
Around
weird,
9,
bro.
almost
That's
no customers were
weird.
coming in. I think only 1 or 2 people came in, so I grabbed a sandwich from the fridge and took a quick lunch break. Of course, right when I did, someone walked in. I made my way
Of
back
course
to
it's
the
another
front desk
ugly-ass
and put
nigga,
the
man.
sandwich aside, waiting for the customer to finish shopping first. I pulled my phone out, and after a couple minutes, I looked up to see how the customer was doing.
Is this the nigga from Big Mouth? What's that nigga name? What's that nigga name? That's this nigga. Right? It's the nigga from Big Mouth. He done grew up. Oh shit! Nigga done grew up.
But didn't see him. I scanned the room again and still didn't see him anywhere. Thinking they were maybe in some off angle I couldn't see, I waited a few more minutes, but they still never came into sight. I didn't even hear them either. Feeling off, I walked around the counter and started looking through the aisles, and it didn't take long to find them.
Strawberries.
In the second aisle, a
Ew!
man was
What the
crouched
fuck?
down at the end, staring at the floor and not moving or making a
This
sound.
nigga eyes.
Sir? The man immediately looked up at me, then stood up and
That
continued
nigga
to
look like the
stare at me.
boogeyman.
All I could focus on were his eyes. They were wide and full, kind of in an unsettling way. But after a couple seconds,
That
he
nigga
quickly
is
walked
on
away and out of the
laced,
store, never
extra
having spoken
large,
a word.
Syndromatic.
Once I saw him
fentanyl.
leave, my first reaction
cap.
was to check where he was crouching to see if there was any reason to be there, but there wasn't. I mean, that whole time, he was just crouching in the aisle. It kind of freaked me out because of how odd it was. I went up to the front door and checked that he'd fully left the area. Obviously it was dark out, but I didn't see him anywhere. I then went back to the counter and stayed a little more alert.
Lock in, my nigga. Lock in.
We are on we last day.
Times have changed.
I'm gonna get YouTube Premium, I promise.
3
I'm
hours
gonna get YouTube Premium,
passed,
I promise.
and not a single customer came in. It was now time to close up, and after so much time passing, I wasn't thinking about that man anymore. I was just ready to go home.
Type shit.
I walked up to the front and locked up the door, then grabbed my bag and started
Chill,
walking toward
nigga.
the
I
back
don't think
door
it's that
to
type of
leave,
story.
when an extremely loud bang screeched through the store.
Ooh.
I stopped in place, knowing it had to come from somewhere in the back,
Lock in,
and it
nigga.
was so loud that I had no idea
Lock in, Nick.
what it could have been. Worried, I slowly walked to the corner and looked down the back hallway. At the far end, dust was scattering through the air as the metal back door was loosely open,
Ah, shit.
and standing right in the hallway was that same man from earlier.
This nigga tripping.
He was staring at me with the same wide open eyes.
That nigga is on fit.
I didn't know what to say or do.
Put the
It was
paws
like I
up,
was
put
just
the
frozen in
paws
that
up.
moment. Despite his clear determination to break in, he didn't look angry. He had no emotion at all. I took a few slow steps back, then ran for the front, leaving the store and running to the other side
man,
of the
smart
street,
man, smart
calling
man.
911. I called my dad too, and he rushed over to make sure I was okay.
What, they got the black nigga running.
The man at the store was gone when police
This
got
strong,
there,
chills
but
ass.
he left behind a sledgehammer
authority.
sitting on the pavement behind the store. At first sight, nothing looked to be missing or stolen, so his intentions are anyone's best guess. It's clear he was unstable though, which means he could have been planning anything. Thankfully for me, I didn't have to find out what that was.
Keep it a buck. Keep it a buck. You in this situation. Boom. Nigga staring at you. You about to close. You about to go home for the night. Nigga staring at you, right? Boom. You scared out you. Like, bitch, your heart about to beat out your damn chest, your stomach, and your ass. Right? You take 2 steps back. The nigga start running at you full speed. What you doing? What you doing? You running or you fading? What you doing? You running or you fighting? Me personally, I'm putting them paws up. I'm putting them paws up. Like, nigga, what you running at? Who you running for? Who you running at? What? See, some niggas, they would've ran. I ain't running. Fuck you wanna do? What it is? Nah, if he a big ass nigga, you feel what I'm saying? Like, if he like my height or like a little bit slower than he's slim, oh, I'm knocking his ass out. But what if he like this big ass juggernaut ass nigga? You gotta hit his out that tray fire.
At the time this happened, I was only a 13-year-old girl. This happened 2 years ago when I was fairly naive. I was a major introvert, only friends with
Yeah, we on contraband tonight.
a few people
After
in my
this.
class. I wanted to be social, but I preferred to be alone and read or write. Classic nerd things. In early November, I got a text on my phone. It was a group chat, asking if we wanted to hang out at night near a park at our school. My parents, being strict and paranoid, would never let me go. Luckily, or what I thought was luck, they were heading out for an overnight trip, and they would be back around 4 in the morning. Everything fell into place for me.
This bitch
Once my
Velma
parents
all
left
along.
around 8 o'clock, I ran out the door and made my way to the park. The one thing I made sure to do was lock the door, because my parents were paranoid after all, and it was their biggest thing that they engraved into me. Once I arrived at the park, I noticed a creepy figure near the edge of the woods. No one else seemed to notice it, and I already thought I had enough reputation as a weirdo.
What's up with these
It was
creepy
too much into
niggas,
true
bruh?
crime, and I
Why
didn't
does all
mention
these
it.
stories have creepy niggas?
The night drew on, and I was having the time of my life, ignoring the gut feeling I had telling me to run.
And this a big ass
Every
nigga
so
too. This
often I
ain't no
would look
skinny
over my
nigga. This a
shoulder,
big
and
ass
the man would
nigga.
still be standing there.
All of these niggas look the same, bro. Big, lank ass nigga with some ugly ass eyes. This a big ass nigga with a beard, though. You a 13-year-old girl. You not doing shit. This nigga's finna fuck you.
Around 10
Literally.
o'clock, 4 out of the 10 people there had to leave due to their curfew. It was getting cold and was nearly pitch black with a few lit streetlights every so often. The rest of us decided to go as well, since it felt more eerie and quiet. The place we were hanging out at was a field that was fenced in with a few exits and entrances. A large wide field with a small park in the back and our giant middle school behind us. The front of the field faced the empty road, and the right and left sides were surrounded by forest. All the people left were getting picked up by cars. The man from earlier that I saw stood by the right part of the forest and road exit that I needed to take to get home. I walked away from my group and I tried to
I know
steady
she
my
shit
heavy
herself
breathing.
right now.
I didn't want to be paranoid, but all the true crime I listened to was catching up to me. The man was probably early 40s to late 30s, dark hair with a beard. Probably only around 5'9", but at the time it
he
seemed
a
like
little
6
nigga.
foot or more. He stood about 10 feet from the exit I had to take,
He a
so
little nigga.
when I got close enough to it, I ran for about 30 feet through the exit and through the woods. Once I
bitch ran
finally
through the
felt
woods.
safe enough, I started to quickly walk through the woods.
This bitch in the
I heard a
woods.
snap and a crunch from behind me.
You better hope you find
I
a
stopped
bear.
walking for a second and quickly checked over my shoulder. Around 15 feet behind me stood the very same man.
Oh.
He was
Well.
walking slowly behind me, almost as if he was trying not to be suspicious. It
Oh.
only made my fear worse.
Well.
I turned around and walked so quickly,
If
I was
only it was
basically
a bear,
jogging.
right? If only it
I
was a
lived
big
about 10
ass,
minutes away
grown
from the
ass
park that
grizzly
we had hung
bear.
out at, and I wasn't necessarily athletic enough to run home. After around 7 minutes of walking fast, I was in my neighborhood. I knew that I could run to my house now if I had to, so I checked to see if he was still trailing behind me. To my horror, he was only 20 yards away. So I ran, faster than I've ever. I could hear his footsteps behind me thumping across the concrete as he ran too.
Ah, shit.
I rushed down an alleyway I knew well and tried to lose him in a park,
At
making
that
my
point,
way
you gotta
home
open up that
longer.
stride.
I could hear his heavy
gotta
breath
open up that
followed by
stride.
his footsteps as he tried to keep up. I cut through the houses,
I know he
backyards, and
big
front
ass taught all
yards.
that
I
good.
finally made it to my
Ain't
house
no
and
way
flew
he
up the
followed you all the way to
steps.
the crib.
I looked behind me, and
With
he
no
had just
brakes.
arrived at the bottom of my stairs
Carrying
as
all
I
that
unlocked the
stomach.
door and bursted through it, shoving it closed behind me, and I heard him hit the door with his whole body.
I know you lying.
I ran around the house and locked all of the windows, turned off all the lights, and I hid in my bedroom with a kitchen knife, just in case he got in. But he didn't, luckily.
Why ain't just called the police?
If this was a better world, that would be where my story would end, but it doesn't. After a few months, I hadn't really told anyone what happened, since I didn't want to get in trouble with my parents for sneaking out.
Oh yeah, that's your
I
fault.
didn't go out with anyone after this, and my loner status returned. I began to write horror stories as a coping mechanism, and I never went out past 7 o'clock. It was around February, when a classmate of mine was sharing a story of some random man following her home from the bus. She described him almost the exact same as the man who had chased me home. Even another girl mentioned that he sounded like the guy who stood outside the school and tried to follow her home once. I didn't join in, but everyone agreed that this guy was just weird. He was kind of forgotten, and
Jump his
eventually I
ass.
moved on too. But around May, I was getting ready to walk to school when my mom pulled me aside and showed me a picture of a man. The guy who stalked me, actually. She told me that he'd been arrested 2 weeks ago for sexually assaulting a child and had escaped last night. She told me to keep an eye out for him and to call the cops if I saw him. I was shaking the whole time I walked to school. It haunts me to know that if he had caught me, I would most likely be in her position,
Oh,
or even
shit.
dead.
Life comes down to a series of moments. Some moments are joyful, others are painful. But when somebody comes along and through their
I didn't get YouTube Premium, bruh. I ain't got the money for it though. I'm poor.
This incident happened during the summer of 2015, just after I had turned 21. And to date, it is still one of the scariest things I've ever experienced. To this day, I still get creeped out when I remember it. The day after it happened, I went back.
What window? What window? What you mean? Everybody in the window?
school. It haunts me to know that if he had caught me,
That's a silhouette, cuz. That's a silhouette. You talking about right here? I think that's a coincidence. Nah, that's a coincidence. That's a coincidence. That's a coincidence.
yeah, I would most likely be in her
What the fuck?
position or even dead.
What the fuck? How niggas be peeping that shit? Hey, niggas got eyes for real.
This incident happened during the summer of 2015,
P as a
just
Q.
after I had turned 21. And today, it is still one of the scariest things I've ever experienced. To this day, I still get creeped out when I remember it.
Crazy.
The day after it happened, I went back to the park and I took pictures of the whole journey in the daylight to send to a friend. So I'll include them here as proof as well. One of my favorite things to do that summer was drive around late at night. As soon as the sun had dipped beneath the sky, or as soon as I clocked out from my job, I'd be in my car and ready to explore the city that I grew up in. July 9th,
And that bitch got a
2015
07
was
Yoda.
one of those nights.
That bitch ain't got no
My
type of
city's
Bluetooth in
Italian
that
American
bitch.
festival was being held that week, so after getting out of an evening summer class I was taking at the time, I headed downtown to see the festival
Yeah, her
for a
friend
bit,
got some big
and I
ass
met
titties.
some friends. I left the festival around 10 p.m., and since I was still wide awake, I decided to go hang out in this little park that was on the shore of a local lake and listen to some music for a while. When I got there, no one was around, and the combination of the warm night air, the
I
quiet
bet any
rippling
amount
of
of
the
money
water
for to be
from
some
a gentle
weird-ass
breeze,
nigga.
and the distant
By
sounds and
herself,
lights
it's a
above the nearby
weird-ass
city
nigga.
limits
That's
lighting
what
up the
stalk
edge of
her.
the horizon made for a perfect night to be out there alone. I parked near the gated entrance to the old weathered playground I had known since childhood and perched myself on one of the swings, with my headphones in and playlist blaring. I was there for about half an hour before they showed up. A set of headlights turned into the parking lot and caught my attention. I watched as a little red Saturn parked on my passenger's side, right next to the gate that I had come in. This little lakeside park is a common night fishing spot, so at first I didn't think anything of another car showing up, and I brushed it off. But after a few minutes, something in my brain told me to be aware of my surroundings. It was then that I realized for the last several minutes, the man and the woman who were the vehicle's occupants had been getting in and out of their car, talking in hushed whispers, and turning their stereo up and down as they did.
They always.
At one point, they had
why these
opened their
can't
back
be
passenger
regular
doors and were
looking
messing around in the
people,
back
bruh?
seat,
Why
like they
something
were trying to
always gotta
unload
be
something
wrong with
large.
their eyes or something?
They made a
Damn.
concentrated effort to keep
These
themselves in the
can't be just
darkness.
regular
And when I
folks up and
realized
no
all of
good.
this, the hair on the back of my neck started to stand up. My brain told me to turn off my music, but keep my headphones in and keep swinging a little bit, so they would think I was still oblivious to what they were doing. When I did, I heard the girl say
WIQ
something
play.
that made my blood
That's an
freeze.
IQ play right there.
I think she's almost done on the swings. At that moment, I knew these people were up to something, and the realization that they had been watching me confirmed the warning bells going off in my head were not needless anxiety.
They're coming straight at me. Trust me, I've got nothing.
I needed to get out of that park, but in order to do so, I would have to walk through the gate and past them to get to my car. And my mind was screaming at me not to go near them.
Better elevate your kung fu skills,
Instead, I got
Jessica.
off the swing and walked toward the back corner of the playground, where the majority of the large equipment was, and acted like I was texting someone. I hid myself from view while I tried to figure out what to do. And what I heard next made my heart
police.
drop into my stomach. A third person's voice joining the conversation.
Damn.
It was then that I realized that while I was busy keeping my eye on these weirdos, a second car had pulled into the parking lot, but the driver had never gotten out until now, when I was out of sight. It was an older-looking woman with a raspy voice, who sounded like she had been chain-smoking all of her life. And suddenly, the three of them started arguing in the darkness. I just knew I needed to get out of that park, but I didn't want to be seen. The part of the playground I was hiding in was situated up against a fence line that separated the playground and fishing area from the basketball courts and boat dock. Aiding and concealing me in the darkness was a large maple tree, whose thickly leaved branches dipped halfway to the ground,
IQ.
and whose
IQ.
trunk, thankfully, was growing on my side of the fence. I decided I was going to climb the tree, high enough to where I could at the very least saddle the fence and hop over. I did this as quickly and quietly as possible, and as I realized I was actually doing it, I was hit with a powerful combination of nerves and adrenaline that almost caused me to lose my balance and fall. Luckily, I saddled the chain link fence, which started squeaking loudly and digging painfully into my thighs through my jeans. But I didn't care. In one sweep, I was up and over the fence, free at last. Afterwards, I decided that I was going to slink around in the dark to the other gated entrance to the park by the boat dock, and then sneak my way along the road back to the entrance where I was parked. Once I was there, I was going to make a dash for my driver's side door and get in as quickly as possible, lock the doors, and get the hell out of that park. My heart was still pounding as I walked along the wet grass.
Nah, just take it. Just take it.
Now
Just
that I
take a
was where I
walk
was
home.
at, doubts started to pop into my mind. What if I was over-exaggerating, and what if I was blowing things out of proportion, like I have a tendency to...
I just thought about it. It's a nigga voice actor talking about the fence was eating up the jeans. Come on, man. Come on, man. The nigga said the fence eating up the thighs through the jeans. Come on, man.
do sometimes. What if they weren't doing anything wrong? As I got closer to the main entrance, I did my best to hide myself in the shadows from the orange glow of the streetlight that illuminated the road. Just at the entrance was a large bush with a porta potty on the other side.
Okay.
And I quickly ducked behind it until I could work up the nerve to run to my car. The people
some
were still
stealth shit.
there.
Assassin's
Now they
Creed.
were congregating in the parking lot. With the raspy voice lady less than 50
Why they
feet
bitch
away
still
from me,
smiling?
standing next to her car. Just as I was trying to figure out what to do next, I heard her say the one thing on top of everything else that I heard and experienced that night that completely took
She
all
said
the
this-
strength
this-
and
this-
bravery
we were
out of
talking
me.
about the Maybach.
Did you get rid of the body yet?
It was like someone punched me in the stomach with an iron fist of fear, and all the momentum I had built up
God
just
police.
strained from my body instantly. I wasn't sure if this lady was messing with me,
God
and even
police.
after she said it, I wasn't even sure that I actually heard what I thought I heard her say. But whatever was going on, I knew I needed to get out of there, and fast. I barely had time to think as this lady got into her car and started the engine, with the sight of her taillights in
Yeah,
reverse,
that's probably what this
prompting me to
is.
quick and
Low-key.
immediate action.
Reddit stories low key go hard
she
though.
started to back
Not
up and
all
swing
of them,
around
but,
to
like,
pull out
some
the
of
gate.
them be like
I dashed
crazy as
across the
fuck.
street
That
and
shit
up a
be-
random
some of 'em be
person's
fucked up.
driveway, concealing myself in thick
I used to
foliage
listen to
as
them
quickly
shits
as
on
possible.
TikTok.
I
Shit
watched
used
as
to fuck
both
my
cars
head up.
pulled out of the parking lot. The gold Nissan that raspy lady had been driving going right,
Duck off.
while the red Saturn with the guy and the girl went left off into the night.
Duck off.
As soon as I was sure both cars were out of sight, I ran full speed down the driveway
Dang!
and into my car, shaking so badly I could barely unlock the door.
Bitch,
Once
go
inside,
home.
I was relieved to find that they hadn't broken in and stolen anything, and I peeled out of the park, doing no less than 50 miles per hour on the main roads home.
No less than 50.
I had gotten to the park a little after 10 p.m., and it was now 11:45 p.m. I pulled into the driveway of my house with my car still running, and I spent at least 15 minutes on the phone with the police, crying as the
You
full
should've did that while
realization of
you
what
was
had just
there.
happened hit me. The county sheriff department was sent out to search the park when I said the lady had mentioned dumping a body, but nothing was found. They called me back around 3 in the morning once they finished their investigation
up with these-
and had me answer a few more
Bruh,
questions.
This animated
Didn't
weird.
sleep at all that night.
It chills
Around
with that
7
police
a.m., I called my
officer.
mom as she was getting ready to go into work, telling her what happened. Normally, my mother is quick to call me out on over-exaggerating things, and I called her partially to confirm that I was indeed overreacting to what had happened the night before. But after I was done telling my tale, she got really quiet on the other end of the phone before telling me not to ever go into that park at night again. I didn't go back there for months afterwards. To this
Fuck it,
day,
move out
I
the
don't
whole
know if anything
neighborhood.
ever came of my report, or if those people were ever caught for anything. At the time, there was a man who had disappeared from the next town over, and his story was all over the local news.
Ah, shit.
A few weeks after he went missing, his body was found in a major national park, about 30 minutes from where this little park was. I still wonder
Same
about
park.
all of that to this day.
I love shopping the Real Real. It's Gucci,
Louis Vuitton.
Prada, Hermes, Dior,
Rolex.
Burberry, Saint Laurent.
This happened roughly
Hey, this
6
the
years
last-
ago, and I would have been
this look
about
like the last
26
one.
years old at the time. I live in a small town in the mountains of southern Appalachia. If you aren't from this region, and that immediately brings to mind visions of poverty and dark hollers, well, they do exist, but the town I am from and still reside in is a university town with roughly 70,000 people. We have a number of public parks, but in recent years, the most popular is the newest, which was built on the south side of town and has a dog park, in addition to a normal playground type park for children, and numerous walking trails, some of which go through wooded areas. It isn't uncommon for people to be walking their dogs late at night. I need to describe the layout of the park a little
it's
bit
late
in
at
order for
night,
the story
shit.
to make sense. There was a large parking lot on one end, and this is the main entrance of the park, and it is where the children's playground and the dog park are located, as well as the restrooms, etc. This lot is long, rather than wide, and stretches alongside a sidewalk that runs next to the playground. On the other end of the park, which is over some hills and through some lightly forested areas, there is a small pond
We gonna hop on that bit after this video, gang.
and another smaller lot. This lot has a gate just like the bigger one, but it has a little area before the gate where it is common for people walking at night to park their cars. I had a friend back in those days who was an avid walker. She was a couple years older than I was, and although petite, was sort of fearless. She would very often go walking at night by herself, and her apartment at the time was sort of out in the country, but only a mile or so from this park. So sometimes she would drive out there and walk by herself at night as well. I would say things sometimes like, you know, you should be more careful. Maybe that's just because I'm a man who was raised in the South and we're perpetually worried about the females in our lives.
Type shit.
She was fairly enlightened and would get angry when I would say something like this.
They be look like Ronda Rousey.
None of
She
this
like
is to
she
say
set this
I
up.
told you so, by the way. I'm just trying to paint a picture. Anyways, long story short, I started meeting her some evenings and walking with her, figuring a bearded 6'1" and 250-pound man.
Damn, that's a
would
big
be a
ass
deterrent to
nigga.
most creepers.
Nigga like a
So
werewolf.
one night we were walking, and while there were usually a few people in the park, it wasn't super late. It was late fall, and the nights were starting to come a little bit quicker.
Very weird build.
It seemed like maybe it was around 8 p.m., but like I said,
He
it's
built
been
like
6 years.
the nigga from Cloud of the
Anyways,
Chance
I had a
Meatball, the
rental
police
car
officer.
that week, luckily as it turned out, because of some work being done on my car, and I had parked behind the gate on the wooded side of the park. As we came through the woods and rounded a hill towards the main entrance of the park, I sort of clocked a van in my peripheral vision. I was pulling
shit,
in the gate of the
mystery
park,
machine.
which for whatever reason
Damn.
had not yet been closed. The parks and rec
Y'all
employees in my
asses
town are sort of
autographs.
notorious for not being strict enforcers on the closed at dusk rule. The weird thing about this was that it was sort of a cliche creeper van.
Yep.
It was an
They
older
got
model
free candy
Chevy
in
with
there.
no
Don't
windows
get
in the
it.
back, a mottled rust and paint job, and dark tinted windows in the front.
Mm-hmm.
For a lot of you, depending on where you live, I'm sure this might already be raising alarms, but in Tennessee, that is like every fifth car on the road. As we walked up the sidewalk parallel to the lot, the van turned behind us and then drove slowly past
I like touch. Come on, bruh. Come on, bruh. Get off that shit. Get off that shit, bruh.
us
Get
on
off
our
that
left,
shit.
coming
Alright,
almost to a stop, then speeding up to circle around ahead of us at the end of the lot.
Why that nigga got such
At this
a
point,
chisel?
obviously I was
a
paying
chisel
closer
cheek?
attention.
Why that shit so
Now
strong?
the van was coming back toward
You
us,
can tell through
and
the
the driver's
trunk,
side
man.
window was down.
He put an extra sharp curve.
This would be
right
the
on
part
that
where a
cheek.
lot of naysayers will probably think I'm making this up, because the man staring at us from that van was
This
about the
nigga is
closest thing to a
ugly.
cliche creep I could think of. He was large and even bigger than me, with weird aviator-style glasses that may have been sunglasses, but were transparent enough that you could still see his eyes. He was wearing a hat and a
Why this nigga
camo-style
so
coat,
pale?
and he had a black mustache. He idled not 10 feet from us, just staring at us
You
expressionless
a big
for a
ass
moment.
nigga. You got it.
We both
Whoop
sort
his
of
ass.
stopped and stiffened and looked back at him.
You were running
There
around. You
was
got
something
it.
about his gaze, some cold-hearted malevolence, the likes of which I hadn't really ever felt in my life, which immediately chilled me to my bones. I have read articles about sociopaths and psychopaths, where scientists
ain't got
theorize
that
that
fire
the
on you,
reason we
gang?
feel uneasy in their presence
He ain't got
is
that.
tied
that
into an
tutus,
ancient
that
biological
doof.
response
That's a big ass
from the
nigga.
times when truly we were their prey, and they were
Damn.
predators among human
That's a
groups
big
and
ass
tribes.
nigga.
But I felt that in that moment. I felt like I was out in the wild, naked on the tundra, and he was zeroing in on me. It was this feeling more than anything that elevated this moment for me, from merely dealing with a creep to something that was
Yeah, he's
perhaps
trying to
far
chase
more
people, chase
sinister.
kids. Nigga, go chase a
Grabbed my
fucking
friend by the
basketball.
arm
Nigga,
and
go
said
chase a
roughly,
bucket, nigga.
Let's go. And started
That's what you
quickly
need to be
across
chasing?
the field
Go chase
towards
that
a series of
cheese.
hills and trees that were between us and the field,
Duck on niggas ass like
and the
Blake
sidewalk
Griffin.
behind. She was shocked
That nigga
at
ran in
first
the
and followed
forest.
quickly. We half walked and half ran a few hundred yards, before realizing that the van had pulled out of the lot behind us and disappeared.
Okay.
My adrenaline was still pumping, and we had a quick conversation, basically consisting of, what in God's name was that? And let's get back to the car and get out of here.
Type shit.
We quickly moved through the woods and started back down the hill. As it descends toward the lot, there were a couple of wide, sweeping switchbacks with some trees and shrubs alongside. We crested the hill and could see the lot below, and what we saw there made my blood stop pumping for a moment. Behind my rental car, the Chevy van was parked, with his bright lights shining on the car and up the hill a little ways. We hid behind some foliage and watched as he switched his headlights on and off for a minute or two. Then he pulled back a bit and shined his brights further up the hill.
He looking for y'all ass.
He sat there for a long moment as we cursed the fact that we had left our cell phones in the car.
Damn.
Tried to decide what to do.
Damn.
Of course, he abruptly peeled out of the lot and took off down the road.
Nice.
Which I did not mention before is a 2-lane country road with not much on it but cow fields and trees.
Damn.
We took off running down the hill toward the car and were now just outside the ring of trees near the lot when he suddenly swings back in.
Damn.
Luckily, we were near cover and got behind a tree, just up the hill from him. Again, he started shining his brights off and on into the trees.
He trying to trick y'all.
At this point, I was thinking I was going to have to attack him or something to try and draw him away long enough for my friend to escape.
Yeah.
Fear, adrenaline, and anger all converged in me like a dark river, and I was probably seconds away from bursting out from the tree and taking a run at him when he once again peeled out of the lot as fast as he could.
Come on.
Well, he didn't have to tell us twice. We sprinted the remaining distance
Yeah.
to the rental car and jumped
Yeah.
in. I took off and went about 60 miles per hour down the road until we got into a
Nice.
neighborhood. I never saw the van on the road. In fact, I didn't see any cars until we got to a main road. I have no
I know
idea
that nigga
where
was.
he went.
I know he was so fucking mad when he came back and seen that car was gone. I know he was so blue. He was like, damn, I missed him. I know he was so mad when he came back.
He was sitting somewhere off the road, waiting or what? We got back to her apartment and my friend told me that, at long last, she would accept a can of mace if I ever wanted to give her one.
Yeah.
We had a
Get
good
some
laugh at that,
mace.
but we were desperately shaken.
A taser.
We decompressed and talked it
Pepper
over
spray.
a while, and
Is that the
I
same
agreed to
thing?
contact the police
Pepper
the
spray,
next day.
mace, that the same thing?
I went down to
Probably.
the station and told an officer what
Get you a
happened, but
PK.
I never heard anything
Get you a
else about
4
it. I have no idea what he wanted. Maybe he was a
Damn,
pervert.
that's a strong ass.
Maybe he was a good old boy that just didn't like the idea of people in the park after dark. But that look he gave me when he was idling next to us makes me think we were pretty lucky to get away. Whatever his intentions, I would surely be glad to never meet him again.
That's it. Alright.